Let's imagine for a second that you fall asleep tonight, and like a mashup Richie Rich and Freaky Friday, you wake up as one of the 200 living heirs to the Rockefeller family fortune, that legendary pile of oil money that once made your ancestor richer than most nations. Congratulations. Your share is enough to live very well, send your kids to excellent schools, and never worry about medical bills. But it's not enough to actually influence the industries your great-great-grandfather once controlled with absolute authority. Indeed, the mathematical reality is brutal. When one man's fortune gets divided across 5 generations of enthusiastic reproduction, even billions become millions, and millions divided among enough cousins eventually becomes wealthy by normal standards, but unable to buy meaningful power. Meanwhile, the family name still carries enough weight to get you featured in society pages and appointed to non-profit boards, creating this strange existence where you're simultaneously privileged beyond most people's comprehension, yet increasingly irrelevant to how actual power and capital flow in modern America. This is wealth at twilight, still bright enough to illuminate comfortable lives, but no longer powerful enough to blind anyone looking directly at it, transforming America's most dominant dynasty into a cautionary tale about what even the greatest fortunes cannot survive. Thus, in today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we identify the final Rockefellers standing and expose why the family needed outsiders to manage their own money. The Rockefeller Empire once commanded 1.5% of America's entire economy, yet today, the family's collective $10 billion barely covers what Elon Musk loses on a bad Twitter day. Now, David Rockefeller Jr., age 83, presides as family patriarch from his 2,000-acre regenerative farm in Columbia County. Because apparently the best way to atone for a century of drilling oil is to grow really, really good tomatoes. He chairs Rockefeller Capital Management, which oversees $187 billion in client assets, though ironically, the family needed Viking Global Investors to buy majority control, a bit like the Corleones needing a loan to stay in the protection business. And his brother Richard's tragic 2014 death in that Westchester plane crash created a slew of trust fund complications. Thus, the real power player is Valerie Rockefeller Wayne, Senator Jay's daughter. She chairs the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and decided the best use of oil money was to destroy oil companies. Yes, she led complete fossil fuel divestment while awarding $62 million in grants last year, essentially using the fortune to fund its own philosophical destruction, which is either brilliantly evolved or hilariously ironic, depending on your perspective. Her brother Justin built the impact network of 90 wealthy families managing $50 billion, basically becoming the world's most successful group therapist for billionaires with environmental guilt. Through Adipar, he's positioned himself perfectly. When rich people need to feel better about being rich, Justin's got a sustainable solution and a reasonable fee structure. Then there's Ariana Rockefeller, the show-jumping champion and arguable black sheep of the family, but only because she's lovingly independent and not bogged down by titles and surnames. And she's the one who opposed divestment while competing on horses worth more than Beyoncé's shoes. Some might say she brings a refreshing honesty to a family that sometimes takes itself very seriously. The family dynamics get even more interesting with Miranda Kaiser, who inherited control of the Rockefeller Family Fund after her brother David's death from brain cancer. She now runs it with the passionate intensity of someone who just discovered their trust fund's origin story came with a carbon footprint the size of Texas. Indeed, we explore these kinds of old money family transformations in our Substack newsletter, where the boardroom dramas and wedding disasters that are too hot for YouTube congregate. You can sign up now for free by visiting the first link in the video description. Now the award for most interesting career pivot goes to Mark Fittler Rockefeller, who left the family business for Idaho, where he collected $342,000 in farm subsidies. Your tax dollars, supporting a Rockefeller's fishing lodge, which even he probably finds amusing. The mathematical truth is brutal. One patriarch became 6 children, became 24 grandchildren, became over 100 great-grandchildren, turning America's greatest fortune into really nice trust funds. The whole unraveling started in 1937 when Uncle Sam took 64% of John D. Sr.'s estate, a tax bill so shocking it turned every subsequent Rockefeller into an estate planning enthusiast. John D. Rockefeller Sr. died on May 23, 1937, at age 97 in Ormond Beach, Florida, leaving an official estate of just $26.4 million, a laughable figure that fooled nobody who understood how the old monopolist had spent 2 decades secretly transferring hundreds of millions to his son. The federal government extracted $17 million in estate taxes from this declared pittance, a 64% wealth massacre that would haunt every future Rockefeller's nightmares. This devastating tax bite came despite Sr.'s careful planning, transforming his heirs into paranoid students of estate preservation who would spend millions on lawyers to save billions from the IRS. At his 1913 peak, Rockefeller Sr. controlled $900 million, approximately $340 billion in today's money, representing 1.5% of America's entire economy in one man's iron grip. He had already given away $500 million, establishing the Rockefeller Foundation with a $100 million gift that contemporaries called insane philanthropy by a guilty conscience. Between 1916 and 1922, Jr. received approximately $450 million from his father in transfers so complex that tax authorities spent years trying to understand them. The young Rockefeller's net worth exploded to $995 million by 1928, making him possibly the only man in America whose wealth increased during the coming Depression. The patriarch's will contained a shocking twist. The residuary estate went entirely to Margaret Strong de Cuevas, daughter of his deceased eldest child Bessie, who had died in 1906 from surgical complications. His handwritten notes explained that when he transferred fortunes to his living children in the 1910s, Bessie lay buried in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, unable to receive her share, a decision that created decades of family resentment. Jr. learned his father's lessons perfectly, establishing the legendary 1934 family trust with lawyers who billed more per hour than most Americans earned per month. This trust revolutionized American wealth preservation, holding Standard Oil's successor stocks that would multiply in value as Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron conquered global energy markets. Real estate from Manhattan to Maine supplemented the portfolio, providing both income and protection against the inflation Jr. correctly predicted would ravage cash holdings. In 1952, sensing mortality approaching, he created a second elaborate trust structure administered by Chase Bank, where the family owned enough stock to ensure their bankers' loyalty. By 1940, Jr. orchestrated creation of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund with his 6 children, establishing the institutional framework that would both unite and divide them. His will directed half his entire estate to this fund, forcing his children to collaborate in philanthropy even as they pursued radically different lives. When Jr. died on May 11, 1960, in Tucson, Arizona, his $160 million estate faced the tax collector again. But this time, sophisticated planning meant only $25 million vanished, a mere 16% loss compared to his father's catastrophic 64% destruction. Jr.'s sophisticated planning preserved $135 million for his 6 children, but nothing could prevent the explosive fragmentation that followed as each sibling built empires, chased power, and scattered the fortune from Manhattan to Mauritius. Nelson Rockefeller burst onto the political stage like a human wrecking ball, bulldozing his way to 4 terms as New York governor while spending taxpayer billions on monuments to his own ego. His Empire State Plaza in Albany cost $2 billion of public money, a pharaonic complex that critics called Rocky's Egyptian tomb, while he insisted it represented democratic architecture. In the mid-70s, Nelson disclosed his personal wealth at $218 million, roughly $1.1 billion today, though everyone knew he hid assets in trusts his lawyers wouldn't discuss. His death, on January 26, 1979, came with maximum scandal. The 70-year-old vice president suffered a heart attack in the townhouse of his 25-year-old assistant Meghan Marshak. Not at home with his wife Happy, as the family initially claimed. The cover-up attempt included moving his body and delaying the ambulance call for an hour, details that emerged despite the family's frantic damage control. John D. III channeled his inheritance into cultural monuments, creating Lincoln Center by convincing his brothers to donate Manhattan real estate worth hundreds of millions for a performing arts complex. His Asia Society, founded in 1956, reflected his prescient understanding that the Pacific would matter more than the Atlantic, decades before other elites caught on. A car accident killed him unexpectedly in 1978, leaving his son Jay to become the family's only senator and his jewelry-collecting daughter Sandra to auction cashmere sapphires at Christie's. Lawrence Rockefeller multiplied his inheritance through venture capital genius, turning a $288,000 Apple investment into over $120 million. His Venrock associates funded Intel, Eastern Airlines, and dozens of tech companies, while he simultaneously donated millions of acres to create national parks, making money and giving it away with equal enthusiasm. Forbes ranked him worth $2 billion at his death in 2004, wealth he built rather than simply inheriting. Winthrop fled to Arkansas, transforming from Manhattan playboy to Southern governor after a $5.5 million divorce from showgirl Bobo Sears nearly destroyed him. His death in 1973 created non-profits that have poured $195 million into America's poorest state, turning cotton fields into cancer treatment centers. David Sr. outlived them all, accumulating $3.3 billion while running Chase Manhattan Bank and collecting world leaders' private phone numbers like baseball cards. He gave away $2 billion during his lifetime, then directed $700 million more from his estate to museums and universities that would carve his name in marble. Abby Babs Moores, the forgotten sister, navigated five brothers in an era before feminism made such imbalances newsworthy. As John III admitted, it was 5-1, and this was before women's lib. By the time this generation died, their 6 fortunes had shattered into 24 pieces held by children who'd learned to spend money faster than their parents could make it. The Rockefeller fortune's true story lies not in boardrooms, but in bedrooms. Strategic marriages that built the dynasty and scandalous unions that shattered it across generations of calculating alliances and explosive divorces. John D. Sr. married Laura Celestia Tetty Spellman in 1864, choosing the abolitionist legislator's daughter for her moral authority over money, though her name would later grace Spellman College when Rockefeller guilt demanded black education philanthropy. Their marriage produced 5 children but only 1 son, creating a biological bottleneck that concentrated wealth for 1 more generation before the inevitable explosion. Junior elevated the family's matrimonial ambitions by marrying Abby Aldrich in 1901, daughter of Senator Nelson Aldrich, who controlled more political power than the president himself. The Aldrich connection transformed new oil money into old establishment acceptance, opening Harvard doors and Metropolitan Club memberships that Standard Oil billions alone couldn't buy. Senator Aldrich, nicknamed General Manager of the United States, delivered something more valuable than his daughter's modest dowry: the social legitimacy to turn robber baron wealth into aristocratic inheritance. The third generation's marriages became public spectacles, starting with Nelson's devastating divorce from Mary Todd Hunter Clark after 31 years to pursue Margaretta Happy Murphy. Happy was 18 years younger, worked on his staff, and came with 4 children from her marriage to a Rockefeller Institute scientist, a scandal that exploded during Nelson's presidential campaign. Political observers credited Happy's custody battle headlines with destroying Nelson's 1964 Republican primary chances against Goldwater, proving that even Rockefellers couldn't survive adultery in American politics. Their 1963 wedding at Pocantico Hills fooled nobody, with reporters counting the days between his divorce and remarriage, while America watched a Rockefeller implode in real time. John III restored dignity by marrying Blanchette Hooker in 1932, uniting oil and chemical fortunes while she became president of MoMA for 21 years. David Sr. shocked society by choosing Margaret Peggy McGrath in 1940. Her father was merely a lawyer, proving love mattered more than lineage for at least one Rockefeller heir. Winthrop's catastrophic first marriage to Barbara Bobo Sears, a showgirl who extracted $5.5 million in 1950s money, sent him fleeing to Arkansas, where he found redemption with social worker Jeanette Edris. J. Rockefeller IV made the family's shrewdest match, marrying Sharon Percy in 1967. Her father ran Bell and Howell and the Illinois Republican Party, creating a merger of political dynasties. Fourth-generation marriages accelerated wealth destruction through equitable distribution divorces, best exemplified by Alida Rockefeller's failed union with future Minnesota Governor Mark Dayton. Each wedding photographer captured not just smiling couples, but the mathematical certainty of fortune division. Every marriage meant future divorces, custody battles, and settlements that would scatter billions into millions. The transformation from SETI's moral capital to Happy's scandal, from Senator Aldrich's power to Peggy McGrath's middle-class love, tells the real Rockefeller story. A dynasty that traded calculated breeding for human complexity, discovering that hearts break fortunes faster than any tax collector ever could. By 2035, the Rockefeller family will complete its transformation from dynasty to diaspora, with 400 descendants clutching trust fund statements showing balances that would have been John D. Sr.'s hourly income. Individual inheritances will drop below $25 million, enough for a house in Greenwich, but not enough to buy a Greenwich politician. The death of the last fourth-generation members will trigger the 1934 Trust's final dissolution, forcing Chase Bank lawyers to distribute remnants of an empire while billing more for the funeral than most heirs will inherit. Rockefeller Capital Management faces absorption by Viking Global, with the family's minority stake purchased for perhaps $500 million that, divided among hundreds, barely covers prep school tuition for the seventh generation. The supreme irony arrives through climate activism. Valerie Wayne and Miranda Kaiser's anti-oil crusade will successfully destroy ExxonMobil's stock price, achieving financial suicide by murdering the very companies whose shares fill family portfolios. By 2040, Rockefeller foundations will have spent $10 billion attacking fossil fuels, more than the family's entire remaining net worth, in history's most expensive guilt offering. The sixth generation inherits Instagram handles worth more than their trust funds, growing up knowing great-great-great-grandfather owned Cleveland before understanding what Standard Oil actually did. These children will attend Thanksgiving dinners where climate warriors battle oil apologists over organic turkey, while lawyers explain why nobody can afford the Pocantico Hills property taxes anymore. By 2050, expect full Rockefeller commodification. Reality shows titled The Real Rockefellers, where cousins fight over wedding venues, CBD wellness brands called Rocky's Remedies, trading on ironic oil connections, and competing memoirs all titled The Last Rockefeller, by relatives who haven't spoken since the trust distributions. Genealogists will profit from thousands claiming Rockefeller descent while actual heirs teach yoga in Williamsburg, supplementing dwindling trust income with Substack newsletters about conscious wealth. The most successful branch will abandon the name entirely, building new fortunes in biotech or AI, while understanding that America's greatest inheritance is sometimes refusing your inheritance. Sovereign wealth funds from Singapore or Saudi Arabia will purchase Rockefeller Center by 2060, erasing the last physical monument while elderly family members accept honorary board positions at ceremonies they can't afford to attend. Harvard Business School will assign the Rockefeller dissolution as required reading on how great fortunes die. Not through revolution, but through reproduction, good intentions, and the American genius for destroying wealth through therapy bills. Some will claim victory as climate activists even as Manhattan floods. Others will launch startups that fail faster than their trust funds deplete, and artists will create installations about privilege in galleries their ancestors would have bought for petty cash. John D. Rockefeller Sr.'s fortune completes its perfect arc, from kerosene lighting American nights to funding lawsuits darkening oil's future, from one man controlling economies to hundreds unable to control their Instagram follower counts, leaving only buildings too expensive to heat, foundations too large to fail, and a name echoing through empty boardrooms where real power relocated to Silicon Valley decades before the last Rockefeller learned to spell their inheritance. And now, we'd like to see you in the comments. Of all the modern Rockefellers, who is your favorite and why? We thrive off of our community below, and we're glad to be back. So don't be shy and leave us a comment below. We look forward to hearing from you, and cheers until the next episode of Old Money Luxury.